All right, folks, this is Joe Imbriano, the Fullerton Informer, and I'm coming to you live from the studios of the Fullerton Informer in Fullerton, California right now. We've got a couple of things that I want to talk to you about, and that's why there's a late broadcast here. We've got a situation on our hands, folks, where things are not the way they used to be when it comes to what we're being told and when it comes to the things we've been taught versus now what they're telling us is reality. If you haven't heard, there is a situation going on in Samoa where the measles has taken a hold of the population, especially children, and they're reporting a lot of deaths. I think there's up to 73 people that have died in Samoa. And they're blaming these deaths on the measles. And they're also claiming that the majority of these deaths are children. This is a very sad situation, folks. It's a very sad situation because anytime people lose their lives that is preventable, it is a tragedy. What is questionable is what is the proper way to prevent these tragedies. Now, we're being told by the quote-unquote officials that measles is a highly preventable disease by vaccination. We're also being told by the New Zealand health authorities, which have now pledged money to get involved and kind of take over the immunization effort, that the best way to maintain public health and prevention is through a vaccination campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, Samoa has the highest obesity rate in the entire world. I've read stories about 12 and 13-year-old girls getting their legs amputated. Did you hear what I just said? Children as young as 12, 13 years old getting their legs amputated because of diabetes. I'm going to switch gears here real quick because I want to talk to you about something. This is an article from the Washington Post I'm going to read to you. It says, getting infected with measles is much more dangerous than scientists once suspected because in addition to the illness caused by the virus, the infection also, get this, it takes a wrecking ball to the immune system. And the measles infection they're claiming now, this is now what they're saying. This is now what they're saying about measles infections. It now destroys up to half of the existing antibodies that protect against other viruses and bacteria, according to research published Thursday. In this, they're blaming anti-vaccine misinformation for the deaths in Samoa. That was a Washington Post article. It was out about a month ago. And I've been chewing on this, trying to figure out a way to get the crud out of the cud, so to speak. And I cannot believe what I just heard. You see, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States, measles would manifest itself about 500,000 times every year in the United States. And there may have been maybe 500 deaths out of those 500,000 people. And of those deaths, they're claiming that the measles was directly responsible. Let me tell you what was going on in the United States in the 30s and the 40s. We had all kinds of industrial pollution. We had homes where there was no heating, there was no sunlight, the water was filthy, the sanitation was subpar. People were living in squalor and malnourished because they didn't have grocery stores like we have today. And people were living in close proximity in the slums. And, folks, they were spraying pesticides all over everything, like the rain falls from the clouds back in the days. Everybody was poisoned. They were doing nuclear testing. They were putting mercury in the hat liners and in the medicine cabinets. And they're putting lead in the paint and lead in the gas. And they're putting diethylstilbestrol in all the animal feeds, fattening up the animals, putting antibiotics and everything. All the ads on television were for cigarettes and liquor and medications and toxic chemical pesticides. There was DDT wallpaper back in the 40s and the 50s, and of course people were going to get sick and they're going to die from stuff because they were sick to begin with. And the people in Samoa are sick to begin with, folks, because guess what? These same people that are putting out this nonsense is also, this is really, really interesting. Let me see if I can find this article. Just a moment. Just a second here. There's a very disturbing this is what's really, really scary. This concerns me. When the Washington Post puts out an article that says, talking about these communities in New Jersey that had the measles outbreak run through it, it referred to these anti-vax communities. Check this out. This is what they're saying, that these communities are weary of government, avoid television, and often rely on their own clinicians for medical care. And in such a void, anti-vaccine misinformation has sometimes gained a foothold, deterring parents from fully vaccinating their children. Did you hear what I just said? They're telling us that there's a problem with people that don't watch television, and there's a problem with people that are wary of the government. They're telling us that we have a problem because we don't trust them. Now, they just got through telling us, according to new research, that the measles now, instead of, look, folks, when people got measles 50, 60 years ago, it gave them lifelong immunity, number one. And number two, it was a stepping stone in building their immune system. Okay? People were generally much healthier 40 and 50 years ago than they are now. If you don't believe me, look around. Measles used to be a rite of passage, and it increased immunity for future infections of all kinds of different things. All right? Your immune system, when it gets worked, it gets stronger, it doesn't get weaker. Now they're saying that measles today wipes out your immunity to other things as well. So, but they're saying that the people that were vaccinated do not suffer from the same phenomenon. I'm going to read this to you again. This is very interesting. Is this it right here? No, that isn't it. Just a moment. Getting infected with measles is much more dangerous than scientists once suspected. Wow. Here we go again with these new trends in medicine, right? These new trends in science. In addition to the illness caused by the virus, a measles infection also takes a wrecking ball to the immune system. It destroys up to half of the existing antibodies that protect against other viruses and bacteria, according to this research. And folks, what it also says, it says that that people who have been vaccinated don't lose their immunity like people who have been infected. Did you hear what I just said? They're saying that the people who have been vaccinated do not lose their immunity like people who have been infected. Did you hear what I just said? They're telling us now that the people who have been vaccinated don't lose their immunity like the people who have been infected. Ladies and gentlemen, isn't vaccination supposed to be based on the premise of exposing us to a pathogenic entity, thereby creating immunity? So now they're telling us that getting sick makes us weaker, so we can never develop antibodies and fight future infections. But no, vaccines do just the opposite. They're magical. New Jersey just rejected the forced vaccination law by one vote today, folks. By one vote. Mutton flaps. How mutton flaps are killing Tonga. You know, the Pacific Islander people that live in that region, their diet mainly consisted of vegetables and fruit and fish. And there were a lot of times of leanness over there, coconut. They lived off the land, they lived off the water. And their bodies were not created by God to eat the rib fat off of the exported New Zealand sheep carcasses that are literally flooding the islands. And their bodies were not designed by God to drink 32-ounce sodas as they ate a bunch of barbecued fat. Okay. The people that live on those islands had a built-in God-given ability to go for certain periods of time without food. And when they did come into high-fat food, their bodies stored it. That's why God created those people. So what's happening is they've been subverted by foreign powers. And what makes me absolutely sick is in this article, I'm going to reread this nonsense here. Where's that? They're talking about the people that don't get vaccinated. Many of these communities are wary of government and avoid television. And they're criticizing us for being wary of government and avoiding television. Now, if you go to Samoa, you know what's on television in Samoa? A bunch of advertisements for fatty meat, fatty food, and a bunch of sugar and soda pop. So they're, on one hand, they're telling us that if we avoid television, we're primitive and dangerous. And on the other hand, the people that are watching television are being subverted, and they're actually being encouraged to engage in a dangerous lifestyle. So you can't have it both ways with the people that are controlling the herd, folks. You see, the people that are managing the herds all over the world have one thing in common, an end game, and that is to control the herd and to cull the herd. On one hand, they're telling us not to watch television. Those of us that don't watch television are somehow a threat to society, and yet the television is actually convincing people to drink soda and to eat a bunch of garbage and to get obese and to get really sick. And so when you're 12 years old, if you're a young 13-year-old girl in Samoa and you've been drinking, gallons of soda pop and eating the donuts and eating all these mutton flaps that are coming in from New Zealand, the fatty part of the sheep rib cage, and you just open fire barbecue that and eat a pound of it every night for dinner and drink, a 2-liter bottle of soda every day. And then you go to the doctors because diabetes the obesity rates in Samoa are the highest rates in the world because of the subversion by the food companies. And you go get your feet cut off for your 13th birthday. What kind of outcome do you think that society is going to have after it's been poisoned and fattened up and then exposed to a potentially weaponized form of measles? Well, it's the kind of outcome that we're seeing today. And that is where you've got a couple thousand cases and you've got 73 to 74 deaths in a society that has been subverted by greasy, fatty, unfit portions of animal carcasses for New Zealanders to eat. So it's exported to, Tonga and Samoa. And so these people are just engorging themselves on a bunch of sheep carcass fat. And we wonder why these people are getting sick from the measles and dying, right? And they're blaming it on anti-vaccination propaganda instead of how these people should be blaming the food industry and the sugar industry and the soda industry and the candy industry and the corned beef industry and the mutton flap industry and the medical industry for teaching these, and especially the pastors, because all these pastors in Samoa, they don't discourage engorging themselves. There's no leadership on how to be healthy. Pastors, Samoa is a very religious country. There's a lot of Christians over there. There's a lot of churches over there. And all the pastors are setting bad examples because it's hilarious. Even the health ministers, everybody over there is 3 times the size they should be because they're eating all the wrong foods. And nobody has the courage to tell them to knock it off. And so what happens is we have a situation, whether this is a staged outbreak a planned epidemic or this is a natural event, I don't know. But what I do know is what's being done to the Samoan people is not natural, and that is the carcasses from the sheep. There's parts of the sheep that nobody wants to eat. They shave off all the, all the good meat, and then the rib cage fat, with all the 1080 residue built up in all the fat that they're eating. I mean, that's carcinogenic. And then you barbecue the fat, and that's carcinogenic. Folks, the Samoan people they've been poisoned. They're being poisoned. They're being killed off with sugar, and all this greasy meat. They've abandoned their ancestral diet, and now they're being subverted by there are measles cases over there, and they're doing the worst thing possible, giving them Tylenol and acetaminophen fever reducers, which further turn the liver on its head in its most crucial time of need. So, in my opinion, the treatment for measles that's being given is probably the worst thing that could be given. The only way to avoid fatalities in terms of an outbreak is to be healthy. And you can't be healthy by drinking soda pop full of high fructose corn syrup, which is broken down by liver action. And you've got people with fatty livers from all of the high fructose corn syrup that's in the sodas. You've got these people that were never designed by God to eat this kind of food. They don't have the capabilities to metabolize the high concentrations of refined high fructose corn syrup in these beverages. And they're literally guzzling these quote unquote fizzy beverages when they have these meat eating parties over there. It's a shame, folks. And their children are being killed off, and the people that are being blamed for these deaths are the people that are questioning whether people should have the right to say no to injections. Okay, they're blaming people across the ocean for the deaths in Samoa. They're blaming people on social media for the deaths in Samoa. They're blaming people that talk about the dangers of vaccinations as the culprits for the deaths in Samoa. They're blaming people that ask people to question the efficacy of vaccinations for the deaths in Samoa. But nobody's blaming the television for tricking these people into going out and eating a whole can of sodium nitrite, sodium erythorbate, and disodium guanylate and soy protein isolate, hydrolyzed corn protein infested corned beef in a 5-pound can lined with bisphenol A with a bunch of monosodium glutamate and all kinds of other stabilizing carcinogenic agents in it. See, the TV tells these people to go out and eat to their heart's content with all these toxic foods and drink all these toxic beverages. And then when they get sick, they blame some guy 3,000 miles away that says, hey, by the way, did you read section 13 of the vaccine insert? It says it's never been tested for this, that, or the other. How do we know what's causing the deaths over there? We don't. All we know is that people are dying, and it's from a myriad of causes, and there's always a straw that breaks the camel's back, and they want to conveniently blame something to further their agenda of getting into our bloodstreams, folks. New Jersey may have held it back for another month or two. Ladies and gentlemen, until we all realize that there is a group of people that want to continue to manage us like a herd, we will never be able to do anything about being managed by the people that look at us as human cattle and treat us like they're chattel. And let me tell you something. They're worried right now. That's why they're doing what they're doing. The strain of measles that's in Samoa right now is certainly behaving abnormally because the incidence of fatality is very high. But what's really strange about the strain that's affecting people over there is it is not a strain that normally circulates in that region of the world, and they don't have a patient zero like they did in New Jersey and in New York, excuse me. The patient zero in the Bronx measles outbreak came from Israel, but they don't have the patient zero in Samoa. But what they do have is door-to-door forced vaccinations. All right. Uh, the laws in Samoa basically state you have no rights. Everyone gets injected. And they have set a very dangerous precedent in that country. See, let me explain something, folks. What they've done now is they have literally thrown all common sense and all normal thought processes out the window when it comes to public health and vaccines. Because now they're telling us that exposure to illness doesn't strengthen our immune system for the future. It actually weakens it. But yet they build the entire science and school methodology of madness of immunology on the premise that exposure to pathogenic entities increases immunity by quote unquote exercising the immune system and giving it memory and getting it ready for further exposure. And so it will be ready. But yet now we're being told that the measles is doing something it's never done, and that is it's wiping out the body's ability, half of the body's ability to combat future illness and exposure. This is an unprecedented statement that's being made by scientists today. This is uncharted territory in terms of propaganda, and this defies logic for us to sit here and accept this false dichotomy that they're trying to feed us as they feed the Samoans a bunch of high fructose bone dissolving corn syrup laced caramel colored sodium benzoate belly busting garbage called soda. And as the subversion from New Zealand continues with the dumping of the 1080 laced carcasses of these sheep, folks, I don't even have the words right now. There's so much to this. This is so serious and so sick and so twisted what they're doing. Okay. Everybody in Samoa has the highest obesity rate in the world. Okay. Is that the anti-vaxxers' fault? The people who are opposed to vaccination, are they the ones causing the obesity epidemic in Samoa? Are we responsible for 13-year-olds getting their legs cut off because they can't walk anymore because of the ulcers that won't heal, because they can't get exercise, because they sit around all day and eat a bunch of food that's been flown in and brought in on boats to poison them with? And then the TV mass markets it to them, and it gets them addicted to all this sugar and all these sweets and all this junk food and all this greasy, fatty, toxic meat coming over from New Zealand that's laced with 1080. 1080 is a pesticide they use to kill off, things, and it ends up in the beef and in the, by the way, don't think that your New Zealand lamb is safe, folks. Okay, because there's 1080 pellets all over the country, and it's in the water, and it builds up in the animals, and you're eating it. So if you think you're having this New Zealand rack of lamb and you think it's all clean and organic, you got another thing coming. But they're cutting off the fatty section of the lamb's rib cage, and no place in New Zealand will buy it. Nobody in New Zealand will eat it. Nobody in New Zealand will sell it. So it gets shipped overseas to subvert a bunch of Pacific Islanders, right? And these guys are having, barbecues galore. Every night it's El Churrasco, whatever the name of those meat lovers paradise buffets is. They just all day long, instead of out there spearfishing at night and walking the beach and swimming and diving, these guys are just sitting around sucking on a soda and barbecuing a bunch of rib cages of poisoned sheep. And their children are doing the same thing, sitting around drinking soda, eating candy, eating corned beef out of a can, and all this canned fatty meat and all this sugar, and they're getting sick. And as soon as the measles comes through, it's now the outcome is bad because their health is poor, and the outcome is horrible because of us, because we're saying, hey, question the medical authorities, question the medical system, question what's in these vaccines. No, folks. That's what's so bad about messing with kids, and that's what's so bad about giving people bad information about what to eat and tricking people into what to eat. Why do you think I sit here and rail against all this junk food that's rotting these kids' teeth out? I talk about all the things that are bad for everybody, and there's no shortage of conversation pieces in regards to this topic. But in Samoa, it's really sad because they're poor and they don't know any better. And these people have been tricked into abandoning their ancestral diet in exchange for a death sentence. And as the death sentence is handed to them in the form of a soda can and a rack of ribs coming off of a 1080 laced sheep that comes in off the barge and ends up on a barbecue, as soon as an outbreak comes to town, it's automatically anybody who's exercising their free speech in the United States or anywhere else in the world's fault for the fatalities over there, because they're doping them up with acetaminophen when they're manifesting with these symptoms of potentially contracting a weaponized version of a genetically modified strain of measles. And that's probably what's going on. You know, if you think this measles epidemic at Disneyland was a natural event that got us SB 277 to California, there's no patient zero. The strain of measles that was found to have been the culprit in the so-called Disneyland outbreak wasn't even a strain of measles that had been tested against for efficacy by the MMR vaccine, and yet it was the impetus and the justification for the forced immunization programs that include the MMR vaccine. It's just, you know, we have this this hepatitis outbreak in the homeless population in San Diego, and that once again was a strain that wasn't even found normally, you know, in this hemisphere. And excuse me for even using that word, the hemisphere, even in this part of the world. Okay, it was a strain that was found, you know, literally thousands of miles to the south, and yet they expect us to believe that this is a natural event, and it ended up being a pretext to force vaccinations to the homeless and spraying down the area. I mean, this is how they do it, folks. You remember that song? This is how they do it, or this is how you do it, right? This is how they do it. This is how they do it, folks. You know, they find they're subverting everyone. Okay, everywhere you go, people are being poisoned. People are being given bad information. In this country, people are getting it from every direction. They're getting it from the lighting. They're getting it from the grocery store. They're getting it from the home internet. They're getting it from their sunglasses. They're getting it from the doctors. They're getting it from the ice cream shop, the liquor stores, the pot joints, you know, the doctor's offices. Everywhere you turn is subversion and poison. And so as soon as some little you know, wind event comes through, everybody loses everything in their house. Well, that's because they had their roofs taken off a long time ago. Well, that's the problem. You know, where I live in Southern California, we have a phenomenon called the Santa Ana winds, where, you know, you have this big pressure gradient and you get these northeasterly winds come tearing through the low-lying areas of the Orange County basin, and you can get winds up to 50, 60 miles an hour. And, you know, the long and short of it is you can see a bunch of leaves and stuff blowing around the streets. But you don't see people's furniture all over the place. But I can tell you right now, if we went and cut everybody's roof off and then the winds came through, you'd see, you know, bras and brassieres and soda cups and straws, and in some cases razor blades and bongs all over the place, right? But see, in Samoa, they've had their roofs taken off of their houses, so when the wind comes through, everything flies out. That's what they do when they subvert a population with sugar and disgusting, fatty, gross meats that are full of preservatives and chemicals. They get sick, their immune system's weak, they're all diabetic, and when measles comes, they drop like flies. Because on top of all I just mentioned, they give them a fever reducer. You know, folks, I want to tell you something. Your body is an amazing machine that God created. It's a living. I can't even begin to explain just how complex our bodies are, and yet they treat it like it's a Volkswagen magnesium block engine. You know, with points and condensers and a generator and you know, a couple of spark plugs and some Mallory ignition wires and some Bosch spark plugs, and they, you know, you know how, look, any of you guys ever worked on cars, you know that the Volkswagen is the simplest engine to work on. I mean, you can, and the shavings from board and out are awesome in the fireplace. You need to throw those magnesium shavings into the fire pit in the desert and it lights up the sky, right? You better have your welding glasses on. But the point I'm making, folks, is a point I'm making here is that they oversimplify the human body. The body is a complex, incredible creation of Almighty God. It's a self-regulating machine. And, you know, if you feed it right and take care of it, illness is something that's a transitory event. It's not a terminal situation. But they've created it into a terminal situation because they have made us into transitory creatures by conning us through the use of the television and the media, and the print media, and the music and the movies, the product placement, and the educational system into killing ourselves with a ridiculous food pyramid and an over reliance on modern medicine, and having all of our common sense engineered right out of us by the school system. So we can't make decisions for ourselves, and we have to act like a herd and be controlled by a herdsman, right? Don't fall for it, folks. Okay. And we need to resist these forced vaccination laws uh, uh, at every level, because you know what? The vaccines in Section 13, they state they've not been tested for mutagenic potential, carcinogenic potential, or impairment of fertility. Now, if a product has not been tested for those things, then how in the world can they justify injecting them into us? Well, they're going to con you into injecting them into you because they feed you garbage and you get sick from eating garbage, and you get weak from eating garbage and being sick all the time. And then when something bad happens, like you get exposed to something that they quite possibly could have weaponized or genetically altered, and then you become terminally ill and you die, and then they blame the death on people that just want common sense and medical freedom. That's a problem. You see, you cannot blame people for not getting vaccinated for the deaths of those people in Samoa. The people that have died in Samoa from the measles had a compromised immune system. A normal immune system will not succumb to measles. I don't care what you've been told, folks. Measles is not a terminal disease. Measles is a dangerous disease for an unhealthy person. And can I ask any of you a question right now? I mean this, sincerely mean this. How is it that in this society that we have anybody that's unhealthy? I mean, you go to the store and, you know, you can get a bag of beans, a bag of rice, a bag of apples, a bag of oranges. I go to the 99-cent store and you can get a bag of oranges. You can go there and get a bag of plums, a bag of rice, a bag of beans, a bag of bananas, a dozen eggs. You could eat anything you want, and then you get onions, garlic, potatoes, tomatoes, anything for $1. And you want to know something? I got a little secret to tell you. These grocery stores throw away about 70% of the produce, right? But I'll tell you what flies off the shelf left and right: the donuts, the sugared cereals, and the sodas, and the beers, and the ding-dongs, and the ho-hos, and the aspartame-laced gum. The people are eating themselves to death. And as a result of them eating themselves into an early grave, they're being conned into thinking that the only thing that can help them before they end up in the pine box is the guy in a white coat with his pills. And that's the con, folks, because they put us, I should say they put people, not me, because I'm not falling for these scams. You know, I'm not going to sit here and drink, 65-ounce soda with a bunch of Hot Pockets in front of a blue light screen flashing a bunch of Baphomets and bimbos at me at 2 in the morning. But some people are into that kind of thing. I'm not. That's the reason why people are sick. That's the reason why people succumb to things that would not normally be fatal. And that is the reason why they're getting away with conning us into thinking that we all got to be scared of something that's going to get us. Well, let me tell you something, folks. It's going to get you if you don't wake up. Because if you want to continue to poison yourselves and poison your children with all of these dangerous light frequencies, all this garbage food, all this microwave radiation from all your gadgets in your house, coming from all your wireless garbage, and all of these pills you're taking to make you happy, and all this frosting and all these Twinkies and ho-hos and all this stuff that you put in your kids' lunchbox, all this Lunchables, all that. Look, folks, this stuff is garbage, and it's time to get it out of your life. Okay, I'm going to shut this down because you know what? I'm getting ready. Okay, you see what's happening right now? Do you see what's happening? Look at me. The world is changing behind me. No, folks, seriously. We've got a situation where if you don't take matters into your own hands, you're no longer going to have a choice when it comes to your health. All right? And when it comes time for you to make a decision, you won't have a choice. And the choice they're going to give you is the color of the casket that you get to choose. This is Joe Imbriano, P.O. Box 4121, Fullerton, California, 92834. On the web at thefullertoninformer.com, WiFiDangers.com, VaxDangers.com, CellTowerDangers.com, 5GDangers.com, NASAFraud.com, Disney666.com, and all kinds of other websites, folks. I do appreciate you tuning in. We need to be cerebral about things. We need to get the word out. This channel is being heavily censored. This information is heavily censored. You need to understand that on this channel, you're going to get truth, and get it out and download these videos and re-upload them and mirror them. Give credit where credit's due. Get the word out while we have the chance, folks. They are working very quickly to shut down communication that has anything to do with speaking the truth about vaccinations and all of the disinformation surrounding the efficacy, safety of, and the necessity for. And we have a small window here to where we can try to wake people up. All we can do, even if we just save a remnant, we've been a success. This is Joe Imbriano signing off. Have a great night, folks. Thanks for tuning in.